Gang, if you're at all like me, I try to avoid pain at all costs. Anyone with me? When I have a headache, what do? I take a couple of Aleve. When my back hurts, I go to the chiropractor. When there's a riff or a tension in a relationship, I can't stand the tension. And so here's what I do. I try and work it out, or I avoid that relationship at all costs. Well, today, Paul is going to suggest to you and to me that sometimes there's purpose in our pain. Friends, what's our natural reaction to pain? What do? We avoid it. We try and get rid of it. We got to numb it. Well, in Romans chapter 11, Paul suggests that just maybe for God, there's purpose in the pain. At least there was for his people Israel. If you've been following along throughout the book of Romans, Paul has agonized in pain, the pain of watching his people, the Israelites, reject Jesus and reject God's mission to the Gentiles. It's heart-wrenching for Paul. But in Romans chapter 11, verses 11 through 24, Paul suggests there's purpose in this pain. Let me give you an example of this. Doctors who work in leper colonies often talk about how the greatest tragedy of leprosy is that a leper can feel no pain in the leprous parts of their body. So if you have leprosy, lepers get injured by burns that go unnoticed. They can't feel cuts or scrapes or puncture wounds. And so worse than the disease itself is your inability to feel, resulting in you're always injured. There's always an infection. The greatest tragedy of leprosy is that you can't feel pain because there's purpose in the pain. Pain has value. It protects us. It's a warning sign. It says it's time to stop what you're doing right now. Well, Paul suggests that the same is true of the pain that's resulting from Israel's rejection of Jesus. Paul suggests that God is using their painful rejection of God's mission to the Gentiles in Jesus to actually work God's purposes. Again, let me explain. In Jesus, God has included the Gentiles, who were formerly outsiders to the faith. And this has caused angst and pain for the Israelites, who believed they were the sole heirs of God's promises. Why the pain? Well, here's what Paul says. There's purpose in the pain. By including the Gentiles, Paul imagines his Israelites seeing their joy and becoming envious, getting jealous, experiencing the pain of them being excluded. He writes in verse 11, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make Israel envious. In verses 13 and 14, he says, I take pride in my ministry in the hope that I may somehow arouse my own people to envy and save some of them. You see, Paul believes God is using him to create the painful conditions for Israel to repent, to come to their senses, and long for a piece of what the Gentiles are now experiencing. Paul's prayer is that there's purpose in the pain, that Israel's hardened hearts lead to Gentile inclusion, and that the Gentile inclusion leads to jealousy and envy on behalf of Israel, which leads to them returning to God's purposes. For Paul, there was purpose in the pain. Pain is never to be seen as God's punishment, hear me, or God's teaching us a lesson. No, quite the opposite. God wired us in such a way that pain protects us. It tells us something's not right. Pain redirects us. It's a warning that something's off, and it's time right now to do something new. So my question for you is this: where are you experiencing a twinge of pain, big or small? In your marriage? At the office? With your son, with your daughter, your mother, your father? Where are you feeling tension? Maybe some anxiety, maybe a little hurt. Where is God warning you that something is off? Remember, pain is the voice of God whispering, let me protect you. Saying something's not right here. Saying to you and me, hey, it's time right now to do something new. Because for God, there's purpose in the pain. A couple of questions for you If you consider yourself a follower of Jesus, have you generally thought of pain as God's punishment in your life or God's protection? And secondly, where are you experiencing pain? What new thing is that pain inviting you to consider in your life?